3. Stephen here, our first overall seed playing Rug Delver. Johnathan Sparks, our 4th overall seed playing Bug Delver.
All right, looks like we've had a turn 1 Thoughtseize from Johnathan Sparks, taking a Delver Seekers out of Stephen Mann's hand. We don't really know a whole lot about the contents of either player's hands as of yet, but that'll become more clear as the game begins to progress and we are able to catch small glimpses here and there.
So they are just waiting for our cue to kick off, so momentarily we should be starting with this match again. Stephen Mann, quite the Pro Tour resume, moto grinder, well-regarded pro.
Yeah, he recently top-8'd Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, I believe.
Or I believe it was Gate Crash.
Gate Crash. But yeah, he's actually kind of notorious on Magic Online for his temper, but he actually is a very calm and collected individual outside of the digital realm. Probably more so for the fact that he just uses Magic Online to vent sometimes. You know, a lot of poker players that play Magic also fume a lot on Magic Online because they're not actually allowed to fume in real life.
Sure.
And I think that that's a very similar thing here. So, I mean, Steven, I've talked to him a few times. He's a very well-respected player in the Florida community and the Magic community in general, though he is a little notorious.
So, Mann here appears the victim of a turn 1 Thoughtseize, taking a Delver of Secrets, and now debating between cantripping and wastelanding. Looks like he settles on Polluted Delta for Volcanic Island.
Now, this is interesting here. Whenever I play Delver decks, I am prone to just wastelanding my opponent out of the game if I possibly can. And, you know, Johnathan leading off with a Thoughtseize, he could be doing that as a preemptive way to take some sort of either disruption or threat out of Steven's hand, and then hoping to follow that up with a Ponder or a Brainstorm and try to hit more land. And if sometimes you just catch him off guard with that early wasteland, you buy yourself like 5 turns of basically uninterrupted doing whatever you want.
Ponder from Steven. And it's interesting you should mention this as it came up in the St. Louis coverage. Actually, Cedric mentioned how big of a fan you are of snapping people off.
Yeah, I prefer the term breaking it off, but, you know.
Same concept.
Correct. I am a fan of the blowouts, if you will, and Wasteland's definitely one of my favorites. The other being particularly powerful sideboard cards such as Leyline of the Void.
Sure.
That's one that I regularly jam in non-black decks. X4. Because, you know, if you want to play Reanimate or a Dredge, you probably deserve to lose some really, really ridiculous hate card.
So Steven chooses not to shuffle, draws off of the Ponder.
Yeah, so this matchup is, I think that the Deathrite version is actually a little more favored simply because a lot of times it comes down to a battle of mana if both players end up drawing Wasteland. And usually the one with Deathrite Shaman is going to win that fight. However, the Rug Delver deck has a lot of strong points with usually main deck Stifle, whereas other versions don't have it. I believe Stephen Mann is playing Stifle, but I'll double check. Yes, Stephen does have 4 Stifle, but when it's a battle of resources, usually the Deathrite one comes out on top. Also, having access to Abrupt Decay is great in a Tarmogoyf fight. Steve actually tries to mitigate that by playing Dismember in his main deck X2, so he is mildly prepared for any sort of Tarmogoyf battle.
So Johnathan really mulling over this Ponder right now.
Extensively mulling, if
decides to keep.
If you're not being too liberal. And it looks like we're going to have a little bit of a Wasteland fight. I don't think Steve actually has a colored source in hand. I don't even know if he had one on top, but I know he had a Dismember, so. Okay, looks like he does have a Flooded Strand. Hopefully he just Wastelands, and we just have no land, break him off with a Wasteland. Those are my favorites.
Steven seemed like he was very close to doing it last turn, so.
Yeah. I really want to just yell across the room, break him off! I feel like that would be outside assistance, though, so we'll just see what happens.
Again, Steven not really in a position to play proactively. His Delver of Secrets has been taken away, and so just a lot of cantrips in hand, and he decides to break it.
All right. Well, unfortunately for Steven, John does have one more land in hand. Looks like a polluted delta, but and a ponder to follow it up to maybe dig for some more land. So not as backbreaking as I would have liked to have seen. But neither player really has a whole lot in the way of actual threats, and they both look like they have a reasonable amount of answers.
This is very commonplace in these Delver mirror matches. Is often Wasteland just causes one person to submit.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I like games of Legacy to end quickly as opposed to being, 45-minute Stoneforge Mystic grind fests or counterbalance top activations. So I like the blowout games. They're a lot more fun to watch.
So Johnathan deciding which cantrip he wants to lead off with here.
It's got to be Ponder, right? You never want to just brainstorm with no fetch. Seems pretty bad, but he does opt for the Ponder here, looking for probably a land and a Tarmogoyf, something like that.
At least a land.
Yes, definitely a land, hopefully. Otherwise, another Wasteland from Steve Mann is going to put him backpedaling for the next few turns at least. Shuffling away, very unlikely there's a land in that pile. Or potentially 3 lands and no threats, because even if you're mana screwed for a little while, if you have some answers in your hand, you really just want to draw a threat. And if that, it's way more likely there was just no lands in that pile as opposed to 3 lands and no threats. But let's see what he draws here off the Ponder. If it's a land, I think it was a land, but again, holding his hand tight to the vest, and it's hard to see.
So Stephen Mann, also with just this one flooded strand remaining, plays his land and passes the turn.
It looks like John Sparks has a little bit of an opening here, hopefully to resolve some sort of threat. Potentially just casting a Brainstorm or something similar to dig a little deeper, look for some Delver of Secrets. But, this is how this matchup goes a lot of times. Both players are just trying to sculpt their hands for later on down the line, trying to find enough resources so they're not dead to Wasteland, trying to put a little pressure on the opponent while also having answers to the threats their opponent plays.
So Johnathan, currently brainstorming, deciding which 2 he's going to set back. Again, all these decisions magnified by if he is planning on shuffling, then Wasteland is another thing that could possibly cause him a lot of harm.
Right. It looks like his hand contains a Disfigure. I believe that's a Tarmogoyf. Not sure what all else is in there. It looks like a couple more blue spells, but that could be anything.
So Johnathan, knowing that Stephen Mann does have Stifle in his list, expectedly asks, "Can I sacrifice my polluted delta?" Stephen says yes.
Yeah, Steven's hand, very reactive here. He has a Dismember, 2 Lightning Bolts. It looks like a Submerge as well. So even if Jonathan's able to apply a little bit of pressure, it's not going to be doing anything for a while. Steven's deck playing very much like the control deck in this matchup, though I don't think his deck is very well set up to do so, seeing he has no way to really win the long game other than just turning his excess lands into not lands via Brainstorm. But Jonathan has that same capability, but also has a way to gain mana advantage through Deathrite. He also has a way to gain board advantage through Abrupt Decay on Tarmogoyf. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game actually plays out, seeing as both players seem like they're just really stock full of answers and not threats.
Stephen Mann has drawn a second land of his own, a tropical island.
I would not actually be opposed to just not playing the Tropical Island, because a Wasteland and Tropical Island would be pretty detrimental here if your opponent ends up having another Wasteland to go alongside like a Tarmogoyf next turn. And but if you're able to draw a Tarmogoyf of your own, you're still having access to being able to cast it before you get Wastelanded. But he does have the Brainstorm along with the fetch land here.
So Stephen going for a Brainstorm here. Looks a little bottleneck potentially on Lightning Bolts that aren't at maximum efficiency here. Draws a 3rd land alongside a Ponder and a Daze, deciding what he wants to set back.
Well, to be fair, he does have 3 bolts, so John Sparks potentially at a precarious 6th life. Something to note for sure. If he wants to go to the dome with all those lightning bolts, John doesn't really have a whole lot of life to work with.
And Johnathan already on 15 just through fetch lands in his Thoughtseize.
Steve figuring out which 2 cards are best to put back. Looks like it's going to be a land and one of the lightning bolts. I feel like he doesn't really want to shuffle away that lightning bolt, though, so he may not fetch Ponder here, but if he's just trying to dig for threats, he could just go fetch Ponder, look for a Tarmogoyf or a Delver of Secrets, and then try to protect it with the Daze, but that seems unlikely considering how John's been, digging over the last few turns with his Ponder, Brainstorm, and fetch lands.
So Steven's going to go ahead here, sacrifice his Flooded Strand, go get Volcanic Island. I imagine we're going to see a Ponder here to follow up. Both players just trying to set up their hands, getting ready for the big fight over threats.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf is one of the more important cards in this matchup, but both players actually coming prepared to the table. Steve Mann with Dismember, Johnathan Sparks with Abrupt Decay. Unfortunately, I could easily foresee this match taking another 25 or so minutes since both players are so well set up defensively at the moment. These Delver matchups are such a grind on resources, and there's so much shuffling and things of that nature. So,
Johnathan going to choose a spot here to cash in the Daze. Targets the Ponder on Steven's side.
I mean, it's as good a spot as any. Daze doesn't have a whole lot of potential to snag important threats after turn 2. When you're a little bottlenecked on mana via Wasteland and such, you can potentially, end up dazing a Tarmogoyf sometimes if you're able to keep your mana or keep your opponent off of 3 mana. But whenever you can daze something like a Ponder or Brainstorm, or even like a removal spell targeting your guys, it's pretty important to do, I think.
So we'll see what Johnathan Sparks here's follow-up here is.
I believe it's just going to be a Tarmogoyf. Seems like the likely play.
You are correct, as he tries to add Tarmogoyf to the board. Steven with all sorts of reactive cards in his hand to answer this potentially.
Yeah, he has a Daze of his own, which I feel like this is one of the best spots for Daze in the matchup, is being able to counter Tarmogoyf, because then, later on your Tarmogoyf's not going to be able to get countered by a Daze, and that's going to let your Dismember take care of it, things like that. But Steven opts for the potential to submerge it, and he draws another Submerge.
So there's a lot of tempo here, but again, not actually anything to allow him to advance his own game.
Right. Steven is potentially saving the Daze for a potential Liliana of the Veil. That card is pretty backbreaking, as it is an easy way for Johnathan to deal with both Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf when normally not a lot of removal spells kill either.
So you see Steven Mann pay a mana here and 4 life to try to dismember this Tarmogoyf.
I mean, it's possible he's trying to bait Johnathan into a Force of Will situation and then just get blown out by Daze. And cool enough, that actually would reset the Tropical Island and let him play it for his land for the turn. Potentially cast a threat of his own, but we know he does not have any threats in his hand to cast. Just a handful of removal spells and a Daze.
So, don't know if Johnathan if this is just gamemanship here, or he actually has some sort of response to this Dismember.
I mean, it's possible he has like double Daze in hand or something, right? But he just doesn't want to upheaval his whole board and then lose to a Daze, right?
Sure. So Johnathan lets go. Tarmogoyf dies. Back to Jonathan's turn.
All right, here comes, looks like probably another Tarmogoyf. Not a whole lot of 2-mana spells. Ooh, a Dark Confidant out of John Sparks. Now, if Steve had kept that Lightning Bolt around and John took, an incremental 6-ish points of damage from Fetch Lands, Force of Will, Dark Confidant, could end up being lethal, but he did shuffle away one of those Lightning Bolts with a Brainstorm earlier, so.
Yeah, interesting to see if Steven here is going to attempt to kill the Dark Confidant or let it ride and try to kill him with Confidant Reveals.
Yeah, there's no way he lets it stick around if possible. A Daze here from Johnathan is going to counter that Lightning Bolt. Unbeknownst to him, though, Steve does still have like 3 or 4 answers in hand, so.
Steven draws Stifle. And now, interestingly enough, at least for the time being, those Submerges in Steven's hand shut off as well.
Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. So John actually potentially making a little heads-up move, protecting his one green source from Wasteland while also turning off the Submerges from Steven. It's interesting to watch small interactions like that happen. And now Johnathan, as long as he doesn't draw another creature that costs green mana, actually just doesn't have to, put another force into play for the foreseeable future.
Wasteland the draw for Steven. Hand of Daze, Stifle, and multiple Submerges.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to burn the Wasteland here. There's not a whole lot of value in just hitting an Underground Sea, but that could bait Johnathan into wanting to use the Verdant Catacombs to cast a spell in the near future, and that turns on the Stifle that Steven drew for the turn.
Also potentially forces Johnathan to have to replay the Tropical Island, turning the Submerges back on.
Correct.
So Tropical Island to play for Johnathan, back in play.
Yeah, and here playing the Tropical Island, probably okay, since if there ends up being some sort of counter war, you want to be able to, pay for like dazes or what have you. But, he, unbeknownst to him, Steven does have 2 Submerges in his hand, so the Tropical Island does turn those on.
So Steven finally finds his first real threat of the match here in Nimble Mongoose.
Yeah, and it's a good one too, because it doesn't tie to very many removal spells at all.
And now it's possible we're going to start to see Steven shifting gears here and start to get a little aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a fully stocked graveyard. It's going to be hard for Johnathan to, keep the Nimble Mongoose at bay, seeing as he's going to have to activate it roughly 5-ish times over the next couple of turns to make it smaller. So,
Submerge targeting the Deathrite Shaman.
yeah, it's a fine play. He's keeping it the Deathrite Shaman in check. Eventually, it could invalidate the Nimble Mongoose completely by turning into a 1/1 and being able to block it, as well as gaining a reasonable amount of life. It's probable he's going to want to keep that on top of his deck instead of shuffling it away with the Verdant Catacombs.
So now Steven finally in a position, he is the...
Wow.
The
Actually,
beatdown deck
this
in
is
this
blowout.
matchup.
This is actually blowout city right here, because we're going to see a Daze, and then a Fetch, and then a Stifle on the Fetch.
Yeah, this is a brutal turn for Johnathan here. Daze, targeting the Diabolic Edict, sacks the Verdant Catacombs. That's a Stifle. A classic Rug Delver turn here, and now Nimble Mongoose, uncontested, and Steven ready to start getting on the offensive.
Yeah, and that's a really huge turn for Steven. He's able to keep his threat alive, get maximum value out of both Daze and Stifle here. Steven contemplating playing his green source into a Wasteland now. I feel like he should probe first, but I don't know if he should pay 2 life or pay the mana.
He's going to pay 2 life here, it looks like. Falling to 12 shows a Deathrite Shaman and a Disfigure.
Yeah, Disfigure particularly strong against Delver of Secrets, although not effective against any of the other creatures in Steven Mann's deck. So a drawn Daze here from Steven could potentially be backbreaking if Jonathan's next draw is a Tarmogoyf, which he hopes to brick wall the Nimble Mongoose. Also access to a Submerge still in Steven's hand.
So Johnathan takes a draw. Has Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, I think he's going to let that slide, at least for a turn. The Delver not entirely threatening. The Deathrite Shaman a little more so, simply because it can gain a lot of life. So I feel like he's probably going to daze the Deathrite Shaman here.
And again, Steven aware the last card in Jonathan's hand is that copy of Disfigure. So Steven knows he can safely daze here. So Steven now takes an untap, draws. It's a Tarmogoyf. Huge draw.
Yeah, that's really big game here. The Disfigure doesn't kill it. He still has Submerge. He actually gets to free roll see the flip from Delver if it does flip. I think he should let the Delver trigger resolve first. It's mostly irrelevant. You know, he knows the last card's Disfigure. He's put Johnathan, I believe, at 7 after that attack, but I'm not positive. And the Tarmogoyf is quite large, and it's going to force a chump block from the Delver Secrets, or just using the Disfigure as a a worse than healing salve.
So that Delver gets redeployed here. Johnathan Sparks just down to Disfigure in hand. Stephen Mann, Nimble Mongoose, and Tarmogoyf.
I mean, you saw just how quickly the game can turn in one person's favor. Stephen Mann playing his cards to their maximum value, putting Johnathan Sparks in a do-or-die situation where he's either forced to chump block with Delver of Secrets or burn and Disfigure for no value. Or healing salve value.
So
That's the worst kind of value.
Johnathan now contemplating whether or not he wants to either chump or use this Disfigure.
I do feel a little bad for Johnathan. He was actually a guy I met a while back, but yesterday he just bought me lunch, just out of the blue. Just drove me to Moe's, bought me a big old burrito. It was awesome.
Look at this, good karma. Now
Yeah,
in
and
the
then
top
top
four.
forward, got a little bit of change in his pocket. I guess maybe I should start buying other people lunch instead of free rolling.
Here comes the Disfigure on the Tarmogoyf.
Come on, days for the full-on blowouts.
Steven has a Delver of Secrets
Yeah,
that he gets to add.
insult to injury. No flips.
And there's the concession. Stephen Mann, our first overall seed, continues his run to the finals here, possibly to the championship, to the title altogether, taking down Johnathan Sparks 2-1. He is set up to play our second seed, Michael Majors.